The law is feeling the heat in Orange County. The DA embroiled in a jail informant scandal, a judge facing a recall effort for reducing a rape sentence, and Santa Ana vice officers under fire for a heavy-handed pot raid. We examine these stories right now on Inside OC. Inside OC is brought to you by 5 Point Communities. 5 Point Communities is an independently owned real estate development company with assets under management throughout California. Hi, I'm Reiff, and welcome to this test run edition of the new Inside OC. We've got some legal controversies to discuss, and joining me to do so, editor of Watchdog.org and founding editor of OC Weekly, Will Swaim. Lawyer and chair of the OC Bar Association and chair of the OC Fair Board, Ashleigh Aitken, and opinion editor of the OC Register, Brian Calle. Welcome all.
Thank you.
Let's start with the Santa Ana pot shop raid. You know, back in May, Santa Ana police raided a pot shop with the precious name Sky High. 13 people have been charged by the police for the alleged illegal operation of this shop. But the folks on trial in the court of public opinion are the police officers themselves. One of the first things they did, and we'll be seeing it shortly, was bashing out cameras, bashing down a door. They missed at least one of the cameras, however, and that recorded just about everything and became a YouTube sensation. It shows the cops being heavy-handed, to say the least, speaking disparagingly about one of the employees, a handicapped employee, and even, it appears, sampling the wares. So the pot shop owner says this was a politically motivated raid. The Santa Ana police say that 3 of the cops are being internally investigated. So Brian, what do you make of this, and where is this all going?
I mean, it's just absurd. I don't know if you've seen the video. I mean, we're going to see the video in a minute. It was absurd. I mean, you had the police making fun of and, you know, just being ridiculous with a woman in a wheelchair, knocking down cameras because they didn't want to be seen, and then, you know, like you said, nibbling on the goodies, so to speak. And the problem is that when you talk to the police officers or the Police Officer Association in Santa Ana, it's like, oh, we're investigating this. There's, you know, we're not sure there's any wrongdoing. I mean, it's very clear. They went so far as to try to get the videos that went viral to be inadmissible for both the investigation and any kind of prosecution, which is ridiculous. It shows very black and white what happened. So the whole situation is hilarious, and it speaks to a broader issue in Santa Ana of figuring out what to do with a very popular commodity, which is pot.
Well, there was a lot of collateral damage here, and I wanted to ask Ashleigh, who actually knows something about judges. What struck me also was the judge who signed off on the warrant comes in for some disparaging remarks about possibly drunk driving, like stopping off on the way to the Staples Center, getting red cups and beer so they can drive off to a game at the Staples Center. The fact, though, of just watching the violence with which they invade a pot shop, where all the customers sort of like,
are probably stoned.
In fact, let's. I think we have that footage. While you're talking, let's try to bring that up and see if we can
first thing you're going to see these guys use it's going to be great. They're going to use this. What do you call those? A battering ram, right?
Yeah.
They're going to blow these doors open, right?
And one of them is in like a ski mask, which is in America, why do you need to cover your face?
There it is, ski mask. And then you got a guy with a helmet, and glasses. I think he's wearing maybe. Another ski mask, sledgehammer, ski mask. It looks like a Russian mob invasion. Okay. And all the customers are going like, what? Oh, okay, guy here with, socks and his sandals, and you're supposed to lay down. It's just remarkable to me that the violence with which these guys come in here into a pot shop is terrible.
Right. Yeah. And however, let me try to say in the defense of the police, when you're making a raid, at least initially, you have to be armed, you have to be careful, you don't know what's on the other side of the door. Okay, all right, I'm just saying, I want to give them a little bit of due. But once
you could have walked in there with 2 officers, Rick. You could have walked in there with 2 officers and said, hey, this is an illegal operation, even though I think it shouldn't be an illegal operation, but it's an illegal operation, we're shutting you down. They would have all gone along with that. Yeah. They would have all gone along with that. There was no need for this at all.
Yeah, no, and I just wanted, you know what? You've persuaded me.
You folded.
I'm easily persuaded on this one. But Ashleigh, as an attorney, is the thing that strikes me, Brian alluded to it, one of the first things they did after they took control of and stabilized this scene was they started knocking out all of the cameras. And is there any plausible reason that they would do that? Instead of inventorying things or doing whatever you do, filling out paperwork, they start knocking out all the cameras.
No, I mean, and to me, it's just a senseless destruction of that personal property of the business, and it seems like you're sending a bit of a message. I don't understand why, and, as you said, when you go in there, you announce they had a warrant, they were legally allowed to enter the premises. You can go in there and you are supposed to inventory the money. You inventory the people. You interview witnesses. You find out you're supposed to be there to collect information to aid prosecutors at a later date in this prosecution. You're not supposed to just go in there and light it up. And I thought it was really overstepping the bounds of proper police.
You said it was to send a message. What message do you send? And I'm being serious. When you come in with, we saw this, crowbars, sledgehammers, and then you start knocking fixtures off the wall and tearing stuff off. What is the message? Intimidation? Is it you're not welcome here?
Well, they're one of the people. I mean, they're one of the pot shops that was not licensed within the city once the city started this lottery program. So they're definitely sending a message that Santa Ana does not want any of these pot shops operating within their city limits that are not part of the legally obtained lottery system.
But you could break the display cases.
Yeah.
You could do all sorts of things. The first thing they did was the cameras. Now let me suggest that that's because they didn't want anything recorded about what they might do in the shop, including possibly sampling the merchandise.
And I think it goes well beyond that, which is you've seen police associations throughout the country show force in various legislatures to try and stop police from being videotaped. They don't like the idea of police being videotaped at all, whether it was Kelly Thomas in Fullerton, whether it's this pot shop. They don't like the idea of us taking out our cell phone camera and getting exactly what's happening on camera. And so there's a broader concern that when people see what police are doing, that there's more criticism and more danger to the lives of police officers.
But Ashleigh, doesn't this almost run counter to where the public is? The public wants all cops to have cameras on. They want as much recorded as possible. And you would think that in many cases it's to protect the cops against unjustified accusations of brutality.
Oh, I agree. I would think that if I was a police officer, I would want the body cam because if you are subject to someone saying that this person is going after me for ill motives, whether they're racially motivated, socioeconomic, they're running a business that I don't want inside my city, I would want that defense. So I was very shocked that the Police Officers Association is trying to say that they have some type of right of personal privacy and that you can never record a police officer no matter what they're doing, when clearly we know that that's not the case.
Well, Will, I'm wondering though, and now Brian's going to jump on me again, but isn't, in a way, should you cut a little slack for the police union, because that's what they do. They defend officers. It's like the Baseball Players Association defending the steroid
I think
users.
it's more like
that's what you do.
I think it's more like a public defender's responsibility that you defend. And I guess, yes, I can get my mind around the idea that that's what the Police Officers Association is supposed to do. It's supposed to defend these guys no matter what, it seems. And that's what creates,
which is wrong. Just saying.
And I think that's what causes the rest of us to be cynical about the defense of almost any police action. It's like, wait a minute, is this one you're doing because you really believe in the innocence of the accused, or because you just do this as a matter of your own standard operating procedure?
And it's a bit of a nuance, but the Police Officers Association is also representing these officers in their internal investigation with the Santa Ana Police Department, not just any type of legal action that might come later.
I think what also, as I watched this video, what was also striking about it is that it really does look like something out of some other country. I don't know, Russia, for example, where you got guys in ski masks, heavily armed, coming in and destroying property. And then you find out, as I did, this is the order in which I found out, that this is a pot shop that lost out in a very highly political lottery system. So there are other pot shops in the city that are totally reasonable, they're allowed, they're licensed, they're permitted, they're legit. This one didn't win in that really sketchy Santa Ana lottery that was, again, that in itself we could probably talk about for a half hour. How that lottery was conducted was absolutely outrageous. It was basically the highest bidder, people who were politically connected, they got the license to retail weed. These guys here on this video, they did not. And so what's the payoff? As you said, there's a message. We own this town. It was like watching an episode of The Wire. These guys came in, they just blew the place up. Why? Because it was a weed bust. It was competing gangs, basically.
All right, so Ashleigh, one last thought, being our legal expert here. What's likely to happen? First of all, are these 13 people going to be prosecuted and convicted, do you think? And will anything happen to any of the officers?
I think that's a good question. I mean, I think that the 13 people that are arrested, it depends on what charges they're being brought. If they're being prosecuted for possession, are they being prosecuted for illegally operating a business? I mean, I haven't seen what charges the DA is going to bring, but I think it's likely if they're going to this much effort that the DA will prosecute somebody. Now, the police officers, I think, is interesting. I think that that's going to be something that is going to be more handled internally than it will be through the traditional legal system.
Okay.
And I would add that it's almost impossible to convict a police officer or get a police officer in trouble. I mean, they're, sad to say, a protected class in many ways because they're so popular with the public and they have such strong lobby behind them.
Well, while we're on problems that the Orange County DA faces, let's talk about the jail informant scandal, something that has gone national. It's been on 60 Minutes, New York Times, Washington Post. The Orange County DA suffering a lot of black eyes for improper use of jail informants, especially in not telling defense lawyers things defense lawyers are supposed to know about what's going on with the informants. The allegations of misconduct, according to some accusations, go back 30 years now, and there's fear it could jeopardize cases, get verdicts overturned, things like that. Already, the DA has been thrown off of one of its biggest cases ever, the trial of Scott DeCray, the mass murderer in Seal Beach who killed the 8 people in the nail salon a couple years back. In that case, the DA is alleged to have improperly used as an informant a Mexican mafia kingpin who was literally singing for his life, a life sentence that he was trying to get reduced. We've had 2 deputies reprimanded by a judge found to have given misleading or blatantly lying testimony. An assistant DA has resigned. The judge has recused himself from a case. A lot of media bashing. Will, what do you make of all this?
Well, first of all, I'm still stuck on the idea that the Mexican mafia guy was literally singing for his life, because if he was, I want that on video. But I take your point. The issue here of using jailhouse informants is, I think we all sort of know this goes on. What's weird about this one is that it went on all the time, even in cases where it didn't matter. And that's sort of what's striking. And then there's the possibility that some of the evidence was really kind of rigged to show guilt, where maybe there was other evidence that was suppressed in those same interactions with confidential informants.
Ashleigh would refer to that as exculpatory.
Exculpatory, that's right, exculpatory, which is our word for the day.
Can you spell that? Can someone spell that for me? I don't.
It begins with E, X, and C, and then some other letters, some vowels and consonants. So it's, they suppressed exculpatory evidence. And, I think this goes back to the point we were just discussing with the weed shop. That the part of my terror here, and Liz, I'll pull back the camera here for a moment, and then we can get back into the real detail, but the real power of government to do almost anything it wants, right? Like, all the cards are in the government's hand. It has a monopoly on coercion almost in this society. And yet these guys built right into their regular process this possibility of getting more evidence. Like, what kind of evidence do you need in the case of a guy who walked into a salon and shot everybody, and everybody knows he did it, and he says he kind of did it, right? Like, you need more evidence on this guy? So there was that. But we see this around the country. I work with national reporters, and in Wisconsin and Milwaukee, we see a DA who ran a rogue agency operation to investigate his political opponents, and then tried to say that, well, he was investigating campaign finance crimes. What did he do? Bash down people's doors, wake them up in the early morning hours, threaten to shoot their dogs, confiscate their property. Why? Because they'd committed a political crime. And there again, you've got people who say, well, he's a cop. He must know what he's doing. It must be okay.
I think it's really dangerous when you have this kind of pervasive action going in with the district attorney's office. I mean, I find this to be so offensive, because not only because of what happened, but of the finger pointing that's going on between the sheriff's deputies. They're pointing at other people. Then you have the people that are the DAs that are saying, well, we didn't know about it. And then really everyone's trying to make the boogeyman be Scott Sanders, who is a Orange County public defender who has chosen, instead of going to a big firm and going to a big corporate and general counsel job, to work to defend the Constitution for those that really none of us want to defend and deal with.
Yes,
and they're trying to make him the boogeyman. And I think that's really, talk about not getting the issue. No, you're the problem. Scott Sanders Sanders is not the problem.
Yeah, Scott Sanders, interesting person, Brian. He's this guy who, to many lawyers out there, has become a folk hero. He took on the system, and he's exposing wrongdoing, and he's winning. There's a lot of prosecutors who claim, this guy's a zealot. He's exaggerating. He's making much more of this than is really there, and he's despised by many of the people in the prosecutor's office.
Yeah, well, he filed a 550-page motion detailing 30 years of what he said were crimes that the DAs maybe did or maybe did not commit. But when we're talking about things that we actually know, is that they put people in the jail cells that had what we call lawyered up. They were already represented by counsel, and that's first week of criminal law in law school. When somebody is represented by counsel, you cannot go as a police officer, as a prosecutor, and talk to that person without the presence of their attorney. There's no debate about that. That is a black and white issue. So the fact that they thought they could get around it by then doubling down and lying, there's a systematic problem going on over there. And I think it's something that this county really needs to evaluate when we think about who we are going to put into that office next.
Yeah.
Most certainly. I think that one of the major issues, right, is that you have a lack of information because of obviously declining media in Orange County and elsewhere in the state. And so what happens is you have these kind of citizen journalists or citizen informants who start to provide information, much of which is credible, but then there's these other people in these other pockets who are sometimes paid, sometimes not paid, to say other things. And so you have this universe of content and information that some of which is credible, some of which is not credible. My personal opinion is the more people who are kind of trying to get out information about the wrongdoing of any aspect of government should be heralded, frankly.
Yeah. What do you think politically, Brian, does this do? Tony Rackauckus has taken a lot of heat on this. He hasn't said a whole lot about it. Saying that their motions and things like that will speak for themselves. Is this going to hurt him politically?
Not at all. Tony Rackauckus could die mid-election
Tony,
cycle.
the DA,
yeah.
in case I didn't
He could die, and if his name is still on the ballot, he'll still be reelected as DA of Orange County. Well, the power of incumbency, I think, especially in DA offices, sheriff offices, other offices, but everything, the power of incumbency. I don't think that he's going to have any kind of problem at the ballot box with this at all. People could use it in terms of attacking him, but everyone's kind of waiting to see when Tony actually is going to retire and not have his name on the ballot to run against him. Otherwise, people like Todd Spitzer would have already been running against him if they thought they could take him out.
The current supervisor, who it's no secret he would like to be the DA someday. Well, on the political aspect, not only might it not hurt him, what does the average voter think? Here's a guy, all right, so they're using informants. They're trying to catch bad guys. They're doing this because these are murderers and this type of thing. And so what? They got a little overzealous. Do you think that's the way the public feels?
Probably at first blush, sure. But I think you pointed out about our singing incantatory Mexican mafioso. Is it mafiosi? Mafioso. This was an undeniably dangerous guy who got his term reduced, and maybe Ashleigh remembers exactly how, or somebody else, I don't remember. But he had like a 25-year to life sentence or something, and now he's down to, I don't know, a few years with time served. He'll be out again. So we're using this as a matter of regular procedure, and your question is, does the public care? I think when we know that bad guys might go back out onto the street under these circumstances, because
of improper behavior.
Yes, because of improper behavior on the part of the prosecutors, because they cooperated with the prosecutors as confidential informants inside the jail, that means that Tony's not doing his job. That Tony could argue, yeah, I'm such a tough on crime guy, I'll use any means necessary, but the response might be, if you use any means necessary literally, then what happens is bad guys go back out on the street, because that's not how the Constitution operates.
Yeah, I think that if, people, I think we underestimate the public's love of justice and the Constitution and their patriotism. I think that, yes, people hear that term tough on crime and people go, yes, it's like a poll, right? Yeah, I'm tough on crime. Mm-hmm. But when you ask them at what level, okay, are you so tough on crime that you're willing to give up your civil rights? No, I think the conversation's going to change. And I think people would be fine with the district attorney's office if they were zealously going after cases, charging cases, properly prosecuting them, and maybe you lose one or two that you thought you had, but the jury came back. That would be a proper use of public funds. What they don't want is having people like the Mexican mafia defend it, and all the cases are going to come down the pipeline. There's going to be a lot of collateral damage. That is going to be a complete misuse of public funds when you have to now go back, retry all these death row cases. You have people that are going to be on the street because their charges are getting dropped. I mean, charges are being dropped like wet rags all across the county because they know that every time, what are they going to use, a confidential informant that a judge has now found dishonest?
Right. In fact, I think you mentioned collateral damage. I think it should be noted that another aspect of the collateral damage here is the families of some of these victims, especially in the Seal Beach case, where they have been waiting for justice for so long, and this is truly justice delayed in this case, and that some of them, I think, have kind of complained that, again, to Scott Sanders, that they're kind of upset at him because he's dragging this out, and why can't we get this?
I think we're pretty unanimous here that their anger is understandable and misplaced, and I don't expect. If you murder my wife, my child, my family, my friends, I want justice now. I'd like to be locked up with the guy who murders my family, right? Please just give me a few minutes with that guy. That's why we have government. We have government to intervene reasonably, legitimately, honestly, lawfully, so that the victim doesn't get his or her hands on the perpetrator and just render them limbless. So that's what we hope for from Tony, and what we get, in fact, it turns out, and perhaps from DAs preceding him, is a system of where the process was to violate the law routinely. That's inarguable and pretty painful.
Actually, just one other aspect of this case. Kamala Harris, our State Attorney General, was given the DeCray case, and she doesn't want it. She's what's her reasoning on that? Do you know?
I mean, I think she's following the proper procedure. I mean, the DA got removed, and so her office is the next in line. They were appealing the decision to then have the DA reinstated. Now, she might be doing that because she's running for Senate, and she doesn't want to be sideways of every DA organization or police organization up and down the state. But I think it also is kind of a natural reaction. Even cases that I've handled that are slam dunks get appealed. I mean, it's just part of the process.
Okay.
But I can read into it as much as you would like me to.
No.
I
think you touched on the main point when you mentioned she was running. I thought, okay, maybe
running
that has
against
something
Orange
to do with
County's
it.
own Loretta Sanchez.
Yes,
for that matter.
We're not biased on this background.
No, not at all. I guess we should note that your father, Wiley Aitken, very prominent attorney, is one of isn't he finance chair for Loretta Sanchez? So, however, I think your analysis was objective on that whole Kamala Harris thing. Okay,
don't tell Loretta that.
No, right.
She doesn't want objective analysis from me.
All right. Let's talk about this recall movement against Judge Marc Calle, an Orange County judge. I find this an uneasy topic to talk about because it is tragic on so many levels. But as you know, there's a recall effort underway to unseat this longtime OC judge who reduced the sentence of a convicted rapist, a young man who was 19 at the time of the crime, who raped a 3-year-old relative. Now, the minimum sentence for this is 25 years. Judge Calle, citing mitigating reasons that we're going to get into, said that this was unconstitutionally harsh, and he reduced the sentence down to 10 years. And is this a case, let me go to you, Ashleigh, our Bar Association person here. Is this a case of a compassionate judge and an attack on judicial independence? Or is Calle a rogue jurist who has failed to follow the law and deserves to be recalled?
I mean, I think it is definitely an issue of judicial independence. And I'm going to just start this by saying that we should be able to have this conversation about whether Judge Calle should stay on the bench without being under attack that I'm pro-child molester or I'm anti-child molester. I think that
takes away all of my arguments, I'm afraid, so I'm done here.
Well, that's what happens. And I think that the politicization of this, that's what the tragedy is. I mean, he is a very well-respected judge, former DA, not particularly the darling of the defense bar. So what was interesting, and the reason that the Bar Association got involved with this, is because right after this happened, as opposed to analyzing the case, having respect for the third branch of government, and sending this to the appellate court to weigh and most likely overturn and send back for resentencing, we had the Board of Supervisors out there calling him dishonest, dishonorable, calling for his head. And I think that I get nervous. That's when I step back and say, excuse me, you're a separate branch of government. Whether you agree with what he did or not, he has a long-standing reputation with the criminal bar. This is the first time that he's ever had any of his sentences, most of which are very long-term sentences that he's doled out, questioned. And I think to look at a judicial career that is very well respected, pick one thing and use it for your political agenda is absolutely something that the Bar Association and I think most citizens should not get behind.
Well, I want to offer just a hypothesis, and that is that we're talking about this at all, in part at least, because of the issues we've already discussed. We've got Tony Rackauckas embroiled in this jailhouse snitch scandal. Tony, among others, has come out and said, what Rick asked, what's Tony's political response? I think his political response is pedophilia, over here, right? So you start talking about this issue, nobody's going to talk about it. This sucks up all the oxygen in the room. It's a great topic for grandstanders on the Board of Supervisors and others. Who's going to defend?
But don't name any names.
I would not.
Okay.
I'll let you do that. Who's going to stand up in behalf of the pedophilia? You have to do, as you said, you have to really almost like take that issue out of it and say this is an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is where we're going to have our dissent since we've agreed on basically everything else. I mean, there's a lot that I disagree with the Board of Supervisors on, and particularly one in particular grandstander on the Board of Supervisors. But like, I think this is one issue where you start to say, this is too weird. I respect that he's had a long and great judicial career, but maybe it's time to hang it up, right? Because I don't know, you guys have obviously read the rationale. One of the rationales for his decision was that, this guy wasn't out actually stalking the 3-year-old. It's because the 3-year-old actually walked into his garage. How does that make it any better? I don't care if he was out looking for the child or if the child walked to him. This is disgusting. It's wrong, and the guy should be in prison for life. Because the fact of the matter is, what if he does it again? And you were saying if someone tried to kill your wife or your daughter, and I don't know if you have kids, sorry, Ashleigh, but I'm going to tell you, if this were my niece, my 2-year-old niece, Clementine, I would want the book thrown at him, and I would think this was an absolute atrocity if it wasn't.
And Brian, you get the last word. Thanks. Great discussion, folks. Well, that's it for now. Thanks again to my guests, Will Swaim, Ashleigh Aitken, and Brian Calle. You can watch this show by going online at rickreiff.com. And when we launch for good, and that'll be very soon, you'll also be able to watch us on PBS SoCal. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again on Inside OC.